Hey, what is going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and yes, we are back on the PlayStation 4 here with the PS4 6.72 Jailbreak. Your eyes do not deceive you, this is not 5.05, this is something newer, and this is actually a jailbreak at the time I record this that came out several weeks ago. I have held off on covering it because it was extremely unstable when it came out, and that's going to be a disclaimer right here. The stability, as I'm recording this right now, still needs to be worked on a bit further. It's much better than it was before, but you're probably going to run into issues of when you're running your payloads or when you're using this. Your console might kernel panic, which means it's going to reboot, your console might freeze or have some other issues, so if you are following the jailbreaks process, you're more than welcome to kind of hold off a little bit further and check on the stability, but otherwise, it's been pretty good, at least at this point in time, but you're still going to run into some issues here and there. So I do want to put in some disclaimers here. First of all, I know this is going to probably be a bit of a longer tutorial, so I'm going to have timestamps down below in the description if you need to get to a certain spot in this video, but just to get some stuff out of the way here, first of all, this does work on all models of the PlayStation 4. That includes the original PlayStation 4, the PlayStation 4 Slim, and the PlayStation 4 Pro. However, it is dependent on firmware. You have to have a console on firmware 6.72 or lower, and if your console is lower than firmware 6.72, you will need to update it to firmware 6.72. If you're on a firmware which is higher than 6.72, then you will not be able to downgrade that system to an exploitable firmware. And yes, that includes if you remove the hard drive, format it, pop it back in, or put in a new hard drive. I mention that because a lot of people think that's how you can downgrade a system. That's not going to be possible. So you do have to get a hold of a system on an outdated firmware. If you do not have one, there's two things I can recommend. One of them is going out and buying another system on that low firmware. I do have a full video giving advice and tips and what to look out for if you're trying to do that. The other thing would be to take your current PS4, and if you're willing to wait, keep it offline and do not update it, in hopes that a newer jailbreak for a higher firmware will be available. There's no ETA on that, there's no estimations that I can give or any sort of time frames there. It just happens when it happens and if it can release. It would also be worth noting for anybody who's interested in going online that despite this using an internet connection, this will not get you onto PlayStation Network. So you are not going to be taking the system online, you're not going to be modding online, you're not going to be doing any of that stuff. This is going to be offline on an outdated firmware, not using PlayStation Network. You will not be able to access that. So this portion is really only going to be for people who have a jailbroken PS4. If you have a jailbroken PS4 and you have blocked updates on this before, you are going to need to unblock updates on your system. If you try and update to 6.72, you'll run into an error and you will not be able to successfully complete this if you have previously blocked updates. Now, for any payloads and using a DNS server, I'm going to be using the internet-based method here, and I'm going to be using Azif's payload host. I've used Azif's payload host multiple times in the past, and this is what I'm going to use here. If you still want to follow along with this video and use your own host or use a different source for hosting, that is more than welcome, but I'm going to be using Azif's payload host and DNS servers. Now, there's going to be two IP addresses we're going to need, and it's going to be these two right here. They're going to be posted on Azif's Twitter as a pinned tweet. Otherwise, I'm also going to have a link down below in the description to a GitHub link for Azif's PS4 exploit host. And if you come down to the use remote DNS option, there's going to be the two IP addresses right here. Alright, so to get this exploit host set up, we're going to go to settings, we're going to go to network, make sure you are connected to the internet for this, go to setup internet connection, and select your method of hookup. I'm going to be using a LAN cable, and then here you're going to want to do custom, and for your IP address settings, if you don't know what you're doing here, just do automatic, do not specify, and we want to do for our DNS settings manual. So right here in the primary DNS, we're going to enter the first IP address. So this first one for primary is going to be 165.227.83.145. Feel free to pause if needed here, but again, double check those links to make sure the IPs are still the same. The second one here, we're going to go down to secondary DNS, and our secondary DNS is 192.241.221.79. Just like that. Again, feel free to pause if needed here, get that typed in, and it would be worth double checking to make sure it hasn't been updated or maybe it changed after this video. So once that's all done, press next. Automatic is fine. We're not going to use a proxy server, and test your internet connection. If you get an IP address and internet connection successful, you are all good to go. So now we can just come back up here to settings, go to the user's guide helpful info, go to user's guide. Now if you used a different exploit host in the past like I have here, we can just exit out. We're going to have to go to the internet browser itself, then press the options button, stop loading, and we'll have to come up here to settings and delete cookies, clear website data, and we could also clear out our history as well. So for browsing history, that'd be coming up here, clear browsing data, that's fine. And the last thing is going to be close up that window. And you can close up any of the other windows as well too. This can be done by pressing options, delete all, okay. And now we can exit out. So now with all that cleared out, we can again go to settings, user's guide helpful info, user's guide. It should cache the theme. And now we'll need to go up to where we have our firmware. So again, mine has already been jailbroken. I'm on 5.05. So I need to go to PS4 4.55 to 5.07. And here we need to enable updates. I know typically you want to disable updates, but I've already disabled updates in the past. So I'm just going to press X on enable updates. And there we go. Once it says enabled updates, we can exit out of here just by pressing the back button or the PlayStation button, whichever works. And now let's work on updating our system. So for this, we do need a USB drive and a computer on hand. Go over to your PC and there's going to be a couple files we'll need. So all the downloads are going to be down below in the description, but the first thing is going to be Firmware 6.72. You can just download this from Softpedia, easy enough, and all the instructions are available here as well too if you need them in written form. The second thing I'd recommend doing just to make sure your download is downloading and complete and it's not corrupted is to download WinMD5 or another MD5 hash checker. You can do this just by clicking on WinMD5 freeware download here, but many people have their own preferred methods of checking an MD5 hash. Alright, so go ahead and download your firmware wherever you can easily find it. Mine is just right here in a folder on my desktop, and I'm also going to include the MD5 hash itself down in the description of the video next to the actual download link for this, so you can just copy and paste this out when needed. But what we can do here is grab our USB drive and plug it in. Now for our USB drive, you're just going to want to make sure it is either exFAT or FAT32. exFAT would be the main recommended file system, just because you'll be able to copy over files which are greater than 4 GB in size, such as games you want to install on your PS4, but FAT32 works as well. Either way, if you need to format this, you need to back up any data that you care about off your USB drive, then right click it, and if you're at least in Windows, format, exFAT is fine, default allocation size is fine, quick format is fine, hit start, okay, let it format, and we're done. Awesome. So now we can go into the USB drive, right click, create a new folder, call it PS4, all one word, all uppercase. Inside of the PS4 folder, we're going to create a new folder, call it update, all one word, all uppercase. And inside of there, we're going to need to copy the firmware file. So grab your firmware file from wherever you downloaded it, copy it, and paste it right into your update folder. Now once that's all copied over, you'll also want to, if you're using Windows, go to View and make sure File Name Extensions has been enabled, but it should look exactly like this. So again, in your USB drive, you go to PS4, go into your update folder, And your file name needs to be exactly this. It has to be PS4 update, all one word, all uppercase, .pup. It needs to look exactly like this when you have your file name extensions enabled. So once you have all that, we now need to check our firmware file to make sure it downloaded and copied successfully. For this, you can grab your MD5 checker, just right click, extract it with whatever you're going to use, and I'm going to open up WinMD5 just like this. Now for this here, we're going to grab the update file, drop it in here from our USB drive, give it a few seconds to check, and we now need to verify it with the MD5. Again, this MD5 hash is going to be linked in the description, so you can just grab it, copy it out, go to WinMD5, just paste it in here, click verify, and if it says it's matched, then awesome, you have a good downloaded copy of Firmware 6.72. So we can press OK, exit out of here, and now let's right click and eject our USB drive. And now let's move over to the PS4. Now that we're back over at the PS4, make sure you plug your USB drive into any of the USB ports of your system. Now we're going to come up here, go to Settings. We're going to be looking for System Software Update right here. Press the X button. And it should say version 6.72. If it does, awesome. Hit Next, hit Accept. Hit X right here. This will just take a few moments, but let the system copy over the update internally and then prepare to install. Your system will then reboot after it's done preparing. Now, as you can see, the console has restarted and it's doing the actual install. Again, just wait a few moments for this and it's going to reboot yet again. Alright, so as we can see, the system has rebooted and we are now on firmware 6.72. Not only from there, from the little notification, but we can also check this by coming up here, going to Settings, go down to System, System Information, and right here we're on firmware 6.72. Perfect, this is exactly where we need to be. Alright, now that everybody should be caught up and is on firmware 6.72, let's go ahead and get this all set up here. So to do this, first of all, we need to go to Settings, and I would recommend you first go into your System Settings. Just after we checked our system information, go to Automatic Downloads and make sure all three of these are unticked. That will prevent your system from automatically updating in the future if it is connected online. And we are going to be connecting online for this method here. Now again, this was mentioned earlier in the video, but I'm just bringing this back up for anybody who might have jumped straight to this 6.72 jailbreak. I am going to be using the Azif provided DNS servers. I'm going to have Azif's Twitter linked down below in the description, where Azif has these two IP addresses for the DNS servers we're going to need in a pinned tweet. I'll also link to PS4 exploit host on GitHub, also by Azif, because if you come down here and go to using remote DNS, run nothing locally, there's going to be two IP addresses right here. And I put this up because these IP addresses could possibly change in the future by the time you're watching this video. So I would always recommend checking on Azif's Twitter and GitHub page to make sure you have the latest DNS addresses. Now to set this up here, we're going to need to go to our settings, go down to network, and we're going to be setting this up online. So make sure you can connect to the internet, go to setup internet connection, and here you need to pick which method you're going to connect your PS4 to. I'm going to be using the LAN cable here because I'm hardlined in. So here you go to use a LAN cable. We're going to do a custom setup. And for the IP address, if you're not sure what you're doing, you can probably just go automatic. Do not specify DHCP hostname. For DNS settings, we must go manual. And these are the two you need to type in. So for your primary DNS, unless these update, and always check those pages, you can use 165.227.83.145. And feel free to pause this part in the video if you need to type this down. Now that you have the primary DNS down, you can hit done, go down to the secondary DNS, and you're going to type in 192.241.221.79. And that should get us onto the exploit host page. So we can press R2, go down to next. For MTU settings, automatic is fine. We will not use a proxy server. And if you test your internet connection, we should be able to get an IP address and we should be able to have a successful connection. Awesome. So now we can exit out of here. So now that we've got all that set up, let's go ahead and perform the actual jailbreak. So for this, we'll come to our settings, go up to User's Guide Helpful Info, open up the User's Guide. This is going to bring up our web page, and as you can see from here, you should get a message like that saying, welcome to the new exploit host. This message will only display once it's changed server side or your cache is cleared. You should get a message like that, but either way, this is now the exploit page we are going to be using. And this is where you're going to navigate to every time you want to enable the jailbreak on your system. Because the jailbreak is not permanent, you have to turn on the system and you have to run a payload. And running a payload should be pretty easy. So for this, we're going to come up to PS4 6.72, and these buttons could change as well by the time you're watching this, but right now at least this is separated. So we can come up to PS4 6.72, press X on there, and the one we're going to be looking for is Mira. There's also Mira Unofficial, and if you want to look further into that, you're more than welcome to, but I'm going to recommend using regular Mira. This is the jailbreak payload we need. So to launch this, you just highlight it, press the X button, and wait. So it might bring up something like this where it says jailbreak failed, reboot your device and try again. So for that, we just need to exit out, hold down the PlayStation button, go down to power, and we're going to fully restart the PS4. Occasionally when running these payloads, you might get an out of memory error such as this right here. If you get one of these, that's fine, just press OK to continue on with it. Now I'm actually quite glad I was able to get that failure the first time around, just to show you all something like that might happen. And if it does, again, you might just have to try this again and go back in and relaunch the payload. And for that, it'd be as simple as turn on your controller, come over to your settings, User's Guide Helpful Info, User's Guide. We'll come up to 6.72, go to Mira, and launch it. So we got jailbreak success, loading payload, waiting for clients, and here we go. When it gives us that second message right there, and it says exit this window using the PS button, you do exactly as it says. So you press the PlayStation button on your controller, and that is it. Your console is jailbroken. Now again, this is a tethered jailbreak and it's not permanent, which means every time you fully power cycle your system, that means if you go to power and you turn it off or you restart your PS4, you have to go through that jailbreak process yet again. If you enter rest mode is a little bit iffy. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, depends on the person and the system as well too. But rest mode might still work on here. You might just have to try that yourself, and it will still keep that jailbreak payload enabled. Either way, you might be looking at this and thinking everything looks the same, and that is true. There's not going to be any change as to how any of this looks. So for this, we'll need to come up to settings. And the big thing here is if we scroll all the way down, we're now going to have a new setting called debug settings. And inside of here, there's going to be a bunch of settings that I wouldn't necessarily recommend poking around in, but the biggest feature we need is within game. If you see an error has occurred, that's fine, just press X to OK out of it. And we need the package installer. And this package installer is really important because this is what's going to allow us, combined with that Mira payload, it's now going to allow us to install applications, homebrew, games, whatever you want to, any type of package file. You'll be able to install it, and using the jailbreak, you'll be able to launch them. So any of these games right here, for example, these are known as fake package files, which means that they are dumped and decrypted and then repacked from a package file to a fake package file. So this is what we're looking for, and that's what we're installing on here. Now, at the beginning of this video, I did walk through the process of re-enabling updates on the system if you had a jailbroken system. And if you're currently jailbroken, you might be afraid of accidentally updating your system. Well, there's two things we can do to prevent that, and I recommend everyone does this. The first thing is, of course, you go into your system, and I'm going to show you all this again. Go to your settings, you go to system, you go into automatic downloads, and you make sure all of these are disabled. That way you do not accidentally download an update file. But we can also break this or disable it, so to speak. using the disable updates payload. So for this, we can just go back, go all the way up to User's Guide Helpful Info, launch the User's Guide, and within here, we're going to go to PS4 6.72 and hit Disable Updates. Just highlight it and press the X button. So once you get that third message right there saying disabled updates, congratulations, you are all good. Your system is in a jailbroken state, which you will always need to re-enable upon a restart, but if you plug in a USB drive with a update file on there, you will not be able to successfully update the system, which is fine. That's what we're looking for right now. And if you ever need to re-enable your updates, again, you just go to User's Guide, you come up to 6.72, and you run the enable updates payload just like I did at the beginning. So there we go, we're good at that point. Now let's go ahead and get a package file installed so I can show you all how to do this here. For this, we are going to need to use that same USB drive. You're probably going to need something bigger if you're going to install a large game, just keep that in mind. And let's go ahead and move over to our PC. Alright, so for the most basic way of doing this, you want to take your USB drive. It could be the same one or a different one. Again, if you have anything you care about on this drive, you want to make sure you back it up. But you can right click, go to your properties, and this is where I'd recommend use exFAT here. If you're going to be installing games and such, use exFAT on the USB drive. But regardless, we can just go here, right click, format, exFAT, default is fine, quick format is okay. Now we have that all formatted, so we can go into the USB drive itself. And I have an example game I'm going to use, which is Little Nightmares. This is a game that I have dumped and created a fake package file of myself. The process should really be about the same for that. I do have a video showcasing this on the channel here, but regardless, it's pretty easy. Once you have your fake package file ready to go, you copy and paste it directly to the root of your USB drive. And this process is going to be the same for all fake package files. This includes PlayStation 4 games, any PS1 or PS2 games which have been compiled into package files like this, any applications, any homebrew. As long as it is a package file, a fake package file like this is going to be the same process. So just give this a few moments to copy over. Now once you have your package or packages copied over, again that's just going to be right there in the root of your USB drive, you can come here, right click, eject, and let's move the USB drive back over to the PS4. From here, plug your USB drive into your PS4. We're going to go up to your settings, go all the way down to debug settings. Again, this is assuming you have the jailbreak enabled. Go to game, press OK on any errors, go to the package installer, and right there it should show your package file. So for this, if you have multiple, you can do an install all, but I'm just going to do one because I only have one. So you just press X on it, it's going to show it as a download right there, and it's now going to copy and install it from your USB drive. Just wait a few moments for this. And once that's all done, it's going to back you out, say it's ready to use, and if we press the PlayStation button, check it out, we should have any new applications right here. Mine is of course the game Little Nightmares, so if I press X, it launches, and it should work just fine. And this game has been installed from a fake package file on my USB drive, and it's now installed and loading on my PlayStation 4's internal drive. So congratulations, that's about all you need to do. Thankfully, as long as you're on the right firmware and you have an internet connection, setting up the jailbreak is easy enough, and installing games or any other packages you want to is easy enough as well too. So there we go, the game was able to install and boot up just fine. It was as easy as that. Even if we press the PlayStation button, it's sitting right there alongside all my other games. These are games that I had already installed and such on 5.05, and they came with me over to 6.72 just because that's how that works. But this game works without any issues. So I do want to go over a couple of other things here before I let you all go. Now, if you want to further protect yourself, or if you just don't want to be online all the time, like you don't always want an internet connection going to your PS4, which is supposed to stay on an out-of-date firmware, you can also cache all of this as well too. So to do this, you can just go up to your settings, go to the user's guide, helpful info, user's guide, and thankfully Azif does provide this. Once this loads up, we can come up to PS4 6.72, and you can cache either individual payloads or you can cache everything. Well, I just went back, but either way, you can come over here, and if you want to cache all of these, you can just come to cache all, press the X button, and wait for this to cache. The reason why you might want to do this is because you can keep everything locally stored on your PS4, so you can disconnect from the internet and still do everything and enable the jailbreak on your PS4 without having to stay connected online, which does help out in regards to keeping your PS4 safe, but in addition to that, also just making things easier if you don't want to have it online all the time. So it looks like this is about to finish up. Well, we got an error caching resources, so we might have to try that again here. If you decide to follow Azif on Twitter as they are updating everything on here, you might get familiar with Azif telling everyone to clear cache, cookies, history, and restart your PS4 anytime you might be experiencing issues or changes are made, and I might be memeing back right there as well too. But either way, let's go ahead and do that on the PS4 just in case you have to. To clear all that data out, you can press the PlayStation button and open up the internet browser itself this time around. And from here, you can also access it from here, which is great, but you can press the options button, stop loading, and you'd come up to settings. You want to delete cookies, clear website data, go back, press options again, go to browsing history, options, clear browsing history, clear that out. And the last thing you can do is also go to close window, press the options button yet again, delete all, press OK, and close out of the browser itself. And from there, that is how you clear out all your browser data. So for that, we can certainly try again by going up to settings, user's guide, helpful info, user's guide, or just the browser if you want to do that. We can come over to PS4 6.72, and I'm going to try to cache these yet again. So as you can see, it says cached successfully. Now to actually test this, I'm going to exit out of here, and this is how this would work. So I'm actually going to come over to my settings and disable my network completely. So now at this point, my PS4 is completely offline. And just to show you all that this is working, let's do a full restart to the PS4. Alright, so as you can see, the PS4 is restarting here. Right here, you can see I have padlocks on my games, so I won't be able to use them. I can come over to settings, and just to verify, I'm not on the network. But if I come up to user's guide, and wait a few seconds, as you can see, the website still comes up, even though I'm offline. So for this, we can go to PS4 6.72, Mira, and wait. And there we go, we got both those messages, so I'm going to press the PlayStation button. And if we come here, I still have padlocks on these games, but yet again, I'll be able to launch Little Nightmares, just like before. So that is how you can do an offline cache on your system if you so choose to. It's completely up to you. If you want to stay offline or if you want to kind of have that added protection, you certainly can. Just remember, if you are needing to get an update, like if there's an update on the server, or there's an update to the jailbreak itself, or there's more payloads that are added, you will just have to go through the process of going to your internet browser and clearing all of your data. So kind of just get into that habit if you're going to choose to do that. Now for one last thing here in terms of general usage, in case you have not picked up on it so far, if you do a full restart to your system, you're probably going to notice that your games and apps that you install are going to have padlocks on them. And if we try to run any of them, we're going to get some please wait screens, and it's going to ask us to purchase this content from the PlayStation Store, which we of course cannot access and should not access on a jailbroken system. So that is completely intentional. Remember the part where I said the jailbreak is tethered? Yeah, you have to go through the browser every time you do either a full restart or you turn off your system. Rest mode, if it works, it works. If not, it's not going to work. But either way, if you do a full power cycle, you have to re-jailbreak your system. And yet again, that can be either through the user's guide, or if you feel like it, you can go through the internet browser. But if you come here, just let it do its thing in case it needs to. Come up to PS4 6.72, Mira, and wait. And if you get an error like this, just press OK. Sometimes those are helpful, sometimes might not. You might have to restart your system, but either way, that's just kind of part of the process here. And there we go. Once we get that second message, we can now exit the window using the PlayStation button, and check this out. We now have everything looks about the same, but if I try that exact same game, which is Killzone Shadowfall, it boots up with no issue. So that's really kind of the general usage of getting your system unblocked for updates if you had a jailbroken system, getting it up to date on firmware 6.72, getting the jailbreak already installed on here, caching it, disabling updates in the future, as well as just general usage on here. So that's about really all you need to know to get started and get running with your jailbroken system. There's a lot of cool stuff such as game mods, there's of course homebrew, emulators, a lot of really cool things. I do have an existing catalog of PS4 jailbreak related videos here on the channel, and many for 5.05, the methods will still work well enough for 6.72. But regardless, I think I am going to be revisiting this here pretty soon because it does bring new life to the system, which is great. Anyways, that is about it for this video. Hopefully this helped out, hopefully you all enjoyed it, and hopefully you now have a perfectly working, hopefully maybe not crashing all too much, jailbroken PS4. If you enjoyed this video, a like would absolutely be appreciated, and if you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too.